you were a younger Nick Walker, and perhaps you're only 200 pounds of muscle at this point, how much body fat do you think would have been like the ideal amount for you, like you to bulk? Like, would it have been 15, 20? And switching gears here, we haven't talked anything about cardio in relation to this training. Are you doing daily cardio sessions? Are you doing, is on that day off, 2 on, 1 off? Is that a cardio only day, a stretching, like what kind of days are you doing, like as far as cardio go?
So right now I do cardio probably four days a week for 20 to 25 minutes. But when it is a complete off day, I don't do cardio, but that's where I'll do a lot of my stretching. But being in the off season, I'm a big component on it's off days or off days, like rest, recover, do your thing. And those days, the majority will get like my deep tissue work done or anything of that nature taken care of.
And do you do a warm up before you lift the weights? Like, are you walking or something? You're just kind of one of those guys, get into the gym and let's get going.
Oh, I always warm up. I always got to do a little warm up. But when I warm up, it's like the first exercise I'm doing. Like I don't really stretch or anything prior to the first exercise. I kind of like I'll use incline dumbbell press as another example. Like I'll use maybe like 30 pounds and just kind of hold a stretch and keep going like that and just keep progressing up in weight until I'm ready to really get going.
Yeah, actually, for me, I'm actually against stretching before lifting weights. It's been shown to decrease strength. You use the stretch reflex. But what I would do is I would go into the gym. Maybe I'm doing a 10-minute bike ride or elliptical or walk. And then I start with a lightweight. For example, on the bench, it'd be a plate aside, do 20 reps, 2 plates for 15, 3 plates for 10, 4 plates for 8, and then do my last set of, say it's 455 for 8 reps or something like that. That's my heavy set. Then I would do a down set where I'd drop the weight a bit and do some more reps, and then save the stretching for the end of the workout. After you've done your entire body, stretch it out. And for me, that was the best way to stay flexible and mobile. Is that similar to how you would do it?
Yeah. Like after chest, what I like to do is, kind of grab like benches and just kind of lean into it and really stretch my chest out, and like, so I can get a nice deep stretch and kind of hold that for like 20 to 30 seconds. Or another thing I like to do is even on like a pec deck with very minimum weight and just kind of hold it there for like, again, 20 seconds, just to really stretch it all out. And I think that helps me a lot.
And I mean, I'm a pretty big guy, but I'm nowhere near your size. The biggest I've ever been is like 232, and you're at 292. And I found that it was hard for me at that weight to move around and do stuff. And so I can't even imagine what it's like. But could you briefly like explain what does it actually feel like on a regular day to be 290, like sitting on a plane, getting into a taxi, like moving around, like, is it weird? Like, or are you just so used to it? Like, like describe some of that, because I'm really curious.
I'm at the point where I'm kind of like used to it all now, but it's still weird. Like sitting on a plane is ridiculous. It's just not, I have to sit first class. And even sometimes on certain planes, first class is just not first class. And even using a plane bathroom, it's ridiculous. I can't even. So I'm used to it. I mean, for being 292, I'll tell you, like, I'm still pretty like conditioned cardiovascular wise, which is pretty, I'm happy about. But I'd say like the hardest things is, trying to touch my back and tie my shoes sometimes, I can't really bend over for too long.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. But other than that, I mean, it's not as bad, I think, because my body gets used to being a certain weight now. And also me being this heavy is also the most conditioned I've ever been. Like, I'm not like really watery by any means, like I normally would. So, I mean, I overall feel really good.
And honestly, I mean, we got to throw this out there. You're 292 pounds in your off season, but you still have abs. You're not fat at all. Like people talk about being sloppy in the off season, perhaps, or you have to kind of eat big to get big. But I've watched your videos and you seem to eat and remain extremely conditioned, in my opinion. Like what body fat percentage would you have yourself sitting at? Like if you had to guess, like I know you don't know 100%, but like give us a guesstimate.
Maybe between like 10 and 12.
And so listen to this, 10 and 12% body fat in his off season. Like so many people, and I have this debate with so many people all the time. I don't know if you've heard me talking about main gaining, that you can build muscle without getting really fat. I mean, if I feel like you're living proof that you can main gain, because obviously you're not going to be 4% body fat year round. After
It's,
a show is
I
over,
think
go ahead.
healthy, and it doesn't feel good year round. So, but I do think, and this is where a huge debate can come in, right? I think maybe if you're just starting out and you want to put that size on, sure, I think maybe getting fat can benefit just to get things moving quicker. But I think once you reach a certain level, like, you know, I'll say my level, for example, I don't really need to grow dramatically anymore. So for me, I need to just put size on in the right places and more refinement. So yes, I need to be in a good amount of a surplus, but I don't need dramatic amount of size. I just need enough to where I can maintain good condition, but still get what I need out of it.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mike Israetel. He has about 300,000 followers. Yeah. He's got Renaissance periodization, quite knowledgeable. You know, he's a PhD. He's a smart guy. And we had this debate, and I asked him about main gain. I thought he was going to be, you know, on the opposite side of me, but he said he feels that most people should be bulking between 10 and 20% body fat, probably, you know, 15% at most for most people, and that extra fat on top of that isn't going to be beneficial. And so I wanted to ask you, like, what percent body fat, because for you, perhaps it's 10 to 12, but you said you've already put on the muscle. But if you were a younger Nick Walker, and perhaps you're only 200 pounds of muscle at this point, how much body fat do you think would have been like the ideal amount for you, like you to bulk? Like, would it have been 15, 20, more than 20? Like, is there ever a time when somebody should get like quite fat, like 25, 30%, or no?
I don't think anyone should get like overly fat to where they don't even look like they work out. Like, I still think a beginner, whatever the case is, like, you should still have a physique where it's like, you can tell he's in the off season, but he's not like, he doesn't look like, you know, a fatty. But I would say, like, realistically, and everybody's body's different, I wouldn't go any higher than 15 to 20.
Wow. So, I mean, so I think the problem is most people don't know what 15 to 20% body fat looks like, because 15% for me is extremely healthy. Like, that is kind of like the ideal health zone. It's not an athlete zone, but it's for the average person that just doesn't care about social media or being the perfect physique, just being like, I'm a healthy 30-year-old or whatever. 15%, that's amazing. And so what I see is a lot of people get into bodybuilding, and obviously they want to put on as much muscle as possible, and they have no abs at all, but they're skinny fat. They have no abs, they don't have a lot of muscle, and they want to put on a bunch of muscle. They have 25% body fat. And so the trainer says you need to eat big to get big. And so they start force feeding cheeseburgers and so on. And I'm like, you're already bulked. You're already fat. You don't need to get more fat. Now, if that same person showed up and had a six pack, veins everywhere, and was skinny, and then you say, hey, you should bulk up, I'm like, yeah, you should. If you're super lean, like, do you know Tristan Lee, perhaps? Like,
yes, that kid needs to eat.
He needs to eat to gain more muscle. I think if he increases body fat, he would get a lot bigger. But so he's perhaps trying to main gain, but at a very, very lean body fat percentage. Same as Jeff Cavalier. These guys are extremely shredded. But if you're a normal built guy, 15 to 20%, I have no belief that eating more is going to help you build more muscle. Like, once you've gotten to the point where you can't see any of your abs, like no outline, eating more isn't going to benefit.
Too fat at that point.
Yeah. And so if you had to give advice to a teenager that's joining the gym, trying to build muscle, and like, so I really want to help the younger people, what advice would you give an 18-year-old joining the gym? What would you tell them as far as maybe training, diet, supplements, anything? What advice would you give these younger people?
I'm a big component of going by a mirror than an actual scale. I think a mirror tells more of a story than a scale ever will. So look at yourself and determine your goals that way. You know, if you feel like you're too fat, you know, start at a little bit of a deficit and then slowly increase from there. And training wise, I'm a big component of training heavy. I think it's, as long as it's safe, of course, and the technique is proper. I'm a big fan of progressive overload, but in different rep ranges. Now, people have different views of progressive overload to a degree. Like, for example, I like to do sometimes sets of 8 until I can no longer get 8 reps. To me, that's a style of progressive overload. Where another style I'll do sometimes, if I'm really, really, really want to go heavy, I'll do like the feeder sets where, you do like a set for 15, a set for 8, a set for 2, a set for 2, and then you hit your top set for like 10. I like to do both. But the safer route, I think, would be trying to target for a beginner a rep range, of 10 reps, but 10 reps every set. And so you can no longer get 10 reps and, just progress that way.
And do you think they should do a total body exercise to start, or would it be better to split it up?
I'm a big component of splitting it up. I think, I've done like the push pull leg and all that. I think it has its place, but I think a beginner should just focus, in my opinion, on each body part directly. And then once they get more advanced, they can try different things of what they think works best for them, and go from there.
Okay. And so the kid shows up and he's a little bit chubby. You wouldn't say, hey, just keep eating and then put on the muscle, then diet later. Like, just don't worry about it. Your idea is to like slowly lose the weight and try to build muscle while doing this.
Yeah. Like obviously their metabolism's not moving as quickly. So obviously I put them in a little bit of a deficit, give them some cardio, some high intense training, and see how that goes over time. And once the weight is, he looks in a good spot to start increasing food, then we slowly start to increase week after week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on how progression's going, how he looks, and just go from there.
And so what I'm a fan of, I'll just tell you what I do, see if you disagree or agree. If I have somebody that say it's 25% body fat, they're a little bit chubby and they want to add muscle. What I first will get them to do is slowly decrease calories, as you said, in a slight calorie deficit, get down to 15%. And then when they get to that point, I would then say, okay, now we're going to up calories at maintenance or slightly above and keep your body fat at about 15 and slowly add muscle. Other people would say diet down from 25 to perhaps 10, and then bulk up to like 17, 18, drop to 10, bulk and cut back and forth. Versus me, I'm just a fan of slowly get down to the 15 and just stay there all the time. Do you think which method, and obviously it's just for you, it doesn't matter what your answer is. What do you personally think?
Well, it all depends on what their goals are too. I think the healthier approach obviously is what you said, the first one, getting them down to a good 15 and then kind of maintaining that, and upping the calories slightly and letting them gain muscle that way. Versus if they wanted to possibly compete or get really, really shredded, then yeah, I would bring them all the way down and slowly progress them back up.
And I think that's a great point you're bringing up. If they wanted to compete, and so yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the competitor. Now they've been at it for 2 or 3 years. Like I did my first show in grade 12, and I'm doing my first show, and I'm dieting down. And then after the show is over, and say you got down to 6, 7, 8%, like a normal bodybuilder would, what body fat should they then go up to in their off season? Remember, they're 20, they've only done one show. Should they bulk up to 20% or more of the 10 to 12 like you're at, or 12, like what percent? Let's just give some general guidelines for that first time kind of newer competitor.
I'm a big fan of just taking it very slow. Like after a show, obviously, get really into it. I would obviously let them enjoy that weekend, have fun. If you put on a little too much, it's water, we'll take it right off. Not a big deal. That Monday, obviously, assuming the show is like a Saturday, let them enjoy Saturday night, Sunday. Monday, depending on how they look and how much they ate, I might put them in a little bit of a deficit just to, get all the water weight off if they decided to, be an a-hole about their food. But if not, and they look pretty much as sharp as they did on stage, obviously just a little bit watery, I would just slowly, put them in a surplus and see how they progress week after week, make increases or not increases if they're progressing just fine with what's going on, and go from there. I think, and I'll even use for me as an example. I think a lot of us, at my age when I was younger coming up, I think we progressed the food a lot harder, which created us to get bigger a lot quicker, which sometimes can diminish the physique a little bit. And so if looking back, if I could have done things differently, I would have probably taken the food a little bit of a slower route, honestly. So that's how I would do it for everyone else.
Great tip. So not pushing the food quite so much after the show. And what level do you think you should cut it off? Because I know you've trained with Anthony Mantello, and for me, my first experience dealing with Anthony was I had done a video about him because he had gained like 25 pounds in a couple days after his first show. He was 17 years of age, and he was like, oh my God, he couldn't stop eating. And then I made a video about it. And then he did his next show and he only gained like a couple pounds. And so he's done a lot better. And you can see how he looks in his off season now versus before. It's like unbelievable. And so he's making progress without getting really big. And so what percent do you think is like a cap? Like, is it 15? Is it 20? Like where the off season percent becomes just too much?
Again, I think it's, you know, person dependent. I think everybody holds body fat differently. But I think just a general, you know, body fat percentage, I would say at least a good 20.
20 about the limit. I would have to agree. If you're past 20%, even if it helps you build muscle, I don't think that's very beneficial, because imagine the diet that you're going to have to go on to lose that body fat.
And I think you would even agree. You don't really have to be in such a dramatic surplus to put size on, because eventually you're just in time, you know, especially after a show. I mean, that's obviously the great time to kind of enjoy food. And because I'm a firm believer in the rebound phase. You could pack on so much muscle that someone could do in like 2 years.
And, you know, and speaking of the rebound phase, what I do believe is you've been dieting really hard for, say, 3 months. Okay. And so for that 3-month period of time, you've hardly put any muscle on. And I believe it's almost like a reflex that the body has. It's almost like newbie gains. For 3 months, your body has been in such a depleted state and been unable to grow muscle, really. And then all of a sudden it has nutrients and you're resting more and you're not overtraining. And so you're going to be able to just grow like a weed at that point. I really do believe, and I agree with you, that right after a show is done, you're probably going to gain a lot of muscle, and you don't need to eat crazy amounts of food. If you've only been eating 2,000 calories a day and you go to 3,000, it's amazing. You might eat 4,000 in your off season, but 3 compared to 2. Wow.
You know, so again, it's very person dependent. You know, if they have fast metabolism, slow metabolism, like sometimes someone who can get lean fast after a show, you can probably feed them a lot coming right out of a show, versus somebody like me who can just gain weight by just looking at food. I got to start a little slower. I mean, everything's person dependent.